My name is Christie Lowrance. I'm the coordinator for the Literary Arts Group at the Sandwich Arts Alliance. Poetry is a unique form of literature. It's ancient, it's enduring, and it's contemporary. In 1823, Clement Moore wrote a poem that we are reading today and quoting today, the night before Christmas. He wrote this poem almost 200 years ago to entertain his children. This is one of the purposes of poetry, but poetry often serves us best in dire times, in difficult and challenging times, such as we have now. In the spring of this year, the Literary Arts Group decided that in order to raise some money for the Sandwich Food Pantry, we would offer to write a poem in exchange for a donation to the food pantry. We didn't really know what to expect, but it turned out to be a wonderful success. And the poems that came in by the writers, some fiction writers, some memoir writers, children's writers, were wonderful. And we decided to put them together into a book, this book, Pebbles in the Stream. That took a couple months to assemble. But this book, Pebbles in the Stream, exemplifies what is the purpose of a poem. Each poem in Pebbles in the Stream is different. Each has a different purpose that was specified by the person who consigned it. So this series is an opportunity to look at the purpose of these poems. And so we'll hear today from Judith and from Bix about the poem that they share together. Thank you.
My name is Judith Goetz, and I had commissioned a poem for my daughter originally that was inspired by something that actually was tangentially going on with my son. He had recently graduated from college, and we were going through, in a pandemic way, the graduation and trying to figure out exactly how that would work. But during that process, I had learned about the poems and wanted to gift my daughter something that was equally as meaningful, because she had been going through pandemic as well in a different way. She was still in school, or still is in school, in high school here on the Cape. And I wanted to commemorate the time that she had spent already in learning and adjusting and pivoting, as we all have been doing as adults. But it's been, I think, far harder in many ways for children who don't have any kind of a balance, or sometimes reserves, to fully understand how they can contribute in ways and make things easier for adults sometimes, but also path or move forward in a way that is meaningful for them during this period as well. So I wanted to take that opportunity that the Sandwich Arts Alliance was giving to gift her a poem that talked about the resilience and all that she had done during this period. I wanted her to know that it had been meaningful and it had been noticed. So thankfully, I got something from Bix that actually fulfilled a lot of that.
Okay, my name is Bix Hamby, and I volunteered to build a poem for someone, and I was asked by Christie to write a poem for Isabella. And so how I write poetry is, if there's a concept that I have a concern with, something I'd like to speak to, I try to think of a phrase that is a capture of that idea. And that will be the base for the poem that I write. And that then I'll construct the poem around that phrase or concept. Personally, I have always felt that I don't like describing what it is that I really have in mind when I do a piece of art, because I believe very strongly that the thing that makes something art above simply craft is its ability to reveal the viewer to himself. And that means that the actual understanding of the work comes from within the viewer. It doesn't come from me. And so I hesitate to say, well, I have this in mind or I have that in mind, because then what I'll do is I'll entrap the viewer to be thinking of it the way I think of it. And I don't want them to do that. I want them to think of it the way they think of it. And if it speaks to them, it will speak in the language that they use, not in the language that I use. So in this case, I heard about this young woman who was in a very trying circumstance, as we all are, was looking outside herself, was looking to actually be of assistance. And that whole notion of not being caught in our own skulls, where it is our view and our look and our interests and our life, it makes us so self-centered that to see someone who really is actually looking elsewhere, looking outside to find meaning, is something that I find very wonderful and worthy of comment. So I created a poem that I hoped in some way would reflect that. So let me read the poem. The certainty of self. Not subject to sight or touch is this prize. No fragrance it emits, nor sound or taste. Composed behind the mirror of the eyes, it acts with calm assurance, without haste. Timelessness of heart, whether young or old, reaching to help friend or stranger is health. The offered hand can ease the bitter cold, while granting the giver equal wealth. Days of service leave nothing to repent, longing for nothing and nothing to miss. An inner peace to make the soul content. The grail we ever seek is wrapped in this. Patient, persistent, reflective and strong, the act and not the voice lends life its song.
So I absolutely loved the poem, and I loved sharing it with Isabella. It was a big surprise to Isabella, of course, that this had been personally composed for her. I think she, you know, at 16, I don't know how much she really understood why I felt that this was such an admirable thing that she had been doing all along. And so within that, it's been wonderful to explore some of those thoughts beyond the poem about exactly what it was that was touching about her actions. And I particularly pay attention to the last line of the poem in which you said, patience, persistent, reflective, and strong. The act, not the voice, lends life its song, was one part that I really identified with her, and being able to talk a little bit further about issues beyond that, you know, exactly character, basically. And it was something that transcended the conversation, it created a larger conversation. And I think that it had immense meaning for her, and certainly something that she will have with her in recognition of this time in a way that sometimes we don't always get a positive outcome. And this one felt like an avenue to be able to take it into a positive area for her. So I'm immensely appreciative of the energies and the thoughts that you took in creating this particular poem, Bix. But in addition to that, I appreciate the commentary that you lent to it as well about not trying to define it, because that is certainly something I did not know on the other end. And it's allowed me to view the poem in a new way right now. So I appreciate that as well.
Very good. I'm happy that you, as the sponsor, I'm happy that you appreciate it. and that you like it. And I certainly hope that she likes it too, and that she, I hope that she can reflect on it and somehow see herself in it. That, because that was my intent, is, as I said, I want the reader to see themselves, and that's what I'm hoping.
I look forward to it's not to say she identifies with pieces of it, but being 16 right now, I think she doesn't necessarily see it. And I think as time passes, she's going to see more and more of it. And it's wonderful to have that point where she didn't necessarily see it to the, actually moving into a point where she will. And
well,
that's timeless.
That's great. But it also, I think that's lovely. And it's a kind of further affirming to me, because she's acting not from a sense of what she's going to glean from it. She's acting because that's what she needs to do, and that's fabulous. That as you say, that she doesn't have may not have a sense of where that would hold in its place in terms of people's sense of responsibility and community function. But I wouldn't expect that. But what's wonderful is that she doesn't need to have the definition to understand the need. And that's just fabulous. I think that's wonderful. And she'll, I hope, I think that in the future, when she kind of gets a little more of an understanding of what this long littleness of life is all about, is she'll grow to appreciate herself. And that's just as important, is to have someone understand that, what I did, that was a good thing.
Absolutely. That it mattered.
Yes.
Absolutely.
Yes.
I couldn't agree with you more.
Okay. Yes. All right. Well, I'm glad. I'm glad that it worked out. Okay.
No, thank you. Thank you very much.
You're quite welcome, as is she.
I'm excited to be a part of this. My name is Todd Herrmann, and I was the interim president for the Sandwich Arts Alliance when this idea of the Poem-athon was introduced, and I was thrilled because, of course, when I started as the interim president in January, we had great plans at the beginning of 2020, but quickly we had to shift our thinking in March due to COVID, and the literary group just rallied to come up with this idea of writing individual customized poems that the money from which would go and serve a really wonderful purpose with the food pantry. So I was the first one to get this rolling, and I was really excited to hear that Christie was going to be the poet that was going to take on my challenge. And the poem that I was interested in developing, or have developed, was thinking about our youngest son, Max, who was in the midst of his senior year at high school. And of course, there were all kinds of changes that happened due to COVID, and questioning how is this going to work? How is he, in terms of his graduation. And Max is, both of our children are adopted. Max we have had since he was essentially an infant, and learning did not come easy for Max. It does not come easy for him. He's got all kinds of issues. He has really worked extremely hard to, and so while it doesn't come easy to him, he has worked really well. And so I wanted to have this poem about him. And I guess maybe this would be a good time for Christie to weigh in. But that was sort of what prompted me to want to do this.
Todd, so I can confess that the beginning of this of the writing of your poem was fear. I had stepped out into the abyss, as I just said, and you joined me. You stepped into the abyss too. You were the first one to commission a poem, but there was no prototype for this program. So I really didn't know how it was going to work. And I thought, I can't ask somebody to be the first one in this. I need to be the first one. So I thought, I'll write the poem. I'm a nonfiction writer. I have written poems and songs, but, not exactly like this. But I thought I need to be the one to write this poem, so I'll take it on. And so Todd said he wanted a poem for his son, who was graduating. And I have 2 sons, and I know what that is, to stand with them on the edge, on the brink. I know what that feels like for the father, and I know what it for the parent. I know what it feels like for the child. And it's an awesome moment. It's filled with hope, with fear, with trepidation. What's ahead? You can't see it, And so this boy, Max, I felt like I stepped into this space with him to write this poem. And there was an image that came to my mind, and other people who've recorded about writing the poems have spoken to the fact that there was an image that they had. I had an image of a doorway, and there was Max in that doorway. And so I put a poem together, and I thought, well, no, maybe this isn't right. I could not knock that image of the doorway and Max in that doorway. I could not shake it. That was the poem. That's how it had to be. And I think in a way, I went back in a way. I called on my understanding as a parent and my understanding of children on the threshold to put this poem together. And so let me read it. It's simply titled For Max. As you stand there now in the doorway of your life, hand on the solid frame, foot on the strong threshold, face turned into the sun, watching out for your future coming down the road. You're ready, more than others. Even so, there are 2 things you do not know, son of ours, 2 lastingly important things. Rivers you will cross, deep and shallow. Hills you will climb, steep and gentle. Joy and pain you will have, lasting and brief. But there will be one constant in your life, our love for you. Our hearts forever will be with you as you cross the rivers and climb the hills and find joy and pain. Know this too, son of ours. You are perfection, in pieces, waiting to be assembled. The end.
It's just such beautiful imagery, and I think as I first read it, when I received it, my eyes were just watering as we move through this. And my favorite piece there is your very last phrase, in pieces, waiting to be assembled. Because putting myself back in that time, I certainly didn't know. And honestly, that stays with us. Max continues to live with us, and he's still a work in progress, as we all are. And yeah, and the pieces haven't totally all assembled yet. He's 19 at this point, and so a lot of still exploration and working through relationships, and including a relationship with us as parents, which has changed dramatically, and that's tough. But it's a beautiful poem. I thank you again for it, and we did frame it as well as, sort of on its own, in addition to obviously having it in this nice collection. So thank you.
I would just like to add that those last 3 lines, "You are perfection in pieces waiting to be assembled." Todd, I always think, I mean, isn't that the human condition?
Yeah.
Aren't you and I waiting to be assembled in some way? I mean, it speaks to all of us, that idea. But I think children especially need to know that. I remember going back to those times in the 20s, especially. You thought you were supposed to have it all together. No. It comes, we're being assembled, and we're assembling ourselves, right? So
Absolutely.
thank you for your good
And
words.
it's very lyrical. I mean, at some point, this would be a wonderful poem set to music. And that that, of course, that's my, kind of my role in the performing art, in the Arts Alliances. I think in terms of performance and music, and this is this is a song, really, I think, that you've written here.
Well, I just want to say one more thing. That line, "You are ready more than others." I thought, I don't know this kid, but I believe that in many ways we're all more ready than we know.
Yeah.
And he is ready. He is ready. He may not know it. He may not show it, but it's all in there.
Yeah.
And do you agree with me?
Absolutely. Yeah. I mean, you were speaking to that time 18-year-old Max, but also the 8-year-old Max. It would have worked for Max at 8 as well. And probably will work for him at 28. Because you're right, we're all going through this, and we are oftentimes we're preparing for something, and maybe we haven't recognized that we're ready to go. That piece of just having the pieces maybe seeing the pieces assembling, and knowing that yes, I can move forward.
Right. So, well, thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you for inviting me, and again, for a wonderful poem, and have a wonderful holiday season if I don't see you.
You too.
All right.
This is one of 3 segments of the Literary Arts taping of the Purpose of a Poem 2020, a series that will continue into the new year. We have given an opportunity for people who consigned a poem in our spring Poem-athon to say what their purpose was, what did they want, and the person who wrote the poem to say what they were looking to achieve in the writing of a poem, and possibly some back and forth between those people. So we've had 12 people who've been involved in these tapings, and we just want to remind everyone that all these poems are in Pebbles in the Stream, which is for sale at the Sandwich Arts Alliance in the center or online, and also at Titcomb's bookstore. The cost is $19.95. We hope you will take an interest in it and buy it. And please look at the literary arts shelves of books. The writers that you have been listening to all have books that are for sale at the Sandwich Arts Alliance. So explore the children's writers and the history writers and the fiction writers, et cetera, et cetera. So thank you very much. All the best.